Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes. Did you freeze? Are you there?
No, I'm
Oh,
here. I'm just trying to think of, what I usually just kind of jump in with, and my brain just like completely shut off and was like, we know no words at all.
you didn't move at all. Like you didn't even blink. So I legitimately was like, "Oh, she froze. I can't hear her."
No, I did freeze, but it was not my internet. It was just my entire being. Like, what do I have to say? Well, also, right before we hit record, Courtney's like, "Oh, when are we recording this month's bonus?" And I was like, "Oh, I thought we were also doing that tonight." And we had just gone over our like recording schedule for the next 2 weeks, where we're both very busy and out of town, and lots of things happening, and had just established that we have no free evenings this week. And then, so we just this is really
Jacqueline
our only
expects me to
choice.
remember things we talk about. It never happens. It never happens.
It's written in my planner, so like it's happening. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with it. I just forgot.
Well, I
But
would like I said, we could do another night, but there's literally not another night that we have unless we do like 10 p.m. recording, which like
yeah.
I'm trying my best
No.
with these 8:30, 9 o'clock ones. So I don't know.
Yeah. We can just, we'll just get them out and it'll be what it is.
Exactly. This one's a little bit shorter, so there's just not a ton of information. It's really sad, like when we get into like why there's not a ton of information, but not a whole lot of information. So this one will be a little bit shorter. So we apologize for that.
But you got an
But
extra long one last week. So
that's true. That's true. You guys did get a
it
long one.
happens.
And I feel like here in a couple weeks, you're going to have another long one coming up for one that I just started today. So we'll, hopefully that one will be, it could even be a two-parter. I don't know. We'll see how things go.
Yeah.
But if you guys want some extra, if you want to hear us a little bit more this week, as previously mentioned, we do have a bonus coming out in 2 days as of the time. No, it came out
No,
last
it
week.
came out
Yep.
last week. I was like, as soon
Okay.
as you started that, I was like,
Yeah, you're like, that is not
I'll just wait
correct.
till she finishes the sentence and then I'll redact it.
You're like, actually, that's wrong. Just ignore everything you just heard. Last week, Thursday, we would have had a bonus come out. So if you guys want to hear more of our voices, you can go to patreon.com/caffeinated crimes and get that information if this week's episode is not long enough for you.
And happy May. It's officially May.
Yes,
You
it
made it.
is.
Fifth month of the year.
Woohoo!
It's flying by. January felt like 40 years. And now here we are, almost in May.
I don't understand how it's May. Yeah, this year has just completely, I mean, I say this every year, but especially this year, I've also just been so busy this year. So time is just really flying by where it's like, I don't even know where everything is going. But I don't think we have any updates that I've heard of at least, but maybe I've just been so busy in my holes that like I just haven't heard of any, but they're probably out there. But
There's probably out there, but I don't have any at the moment either.
okay, cool, great. Well, we will just go ahead and jump on into this then. So our sources for this week were an episode of Unsolved Mysteries called Stolen Kids, a CNN.com article, a missingkids.org article blog thing, and all this interesting article and information from uncovered.com. Two toddlers disappeared from the same park in New York City during the summer of 1989. Many speculate that the two boys were taken by the same person, and they have never been found, and there have never been any credible leads as to their whereabouts. So New York City had some rough areas in the 1980s with a lot of drugs and violence, but there were also a lot of like young, hardworking families just trying to get by day to day. And the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers is a housing project in Harlem. So there were 10 towers in the development with 14 floors each and several apartments on each floor. Like obviously it's New York City, so like you have a ton of people, but just to give you a more specific visual of like how many people are living like in this housing project. But many did describe this community as tight-knit. They're like, it's just a lot of young families with children. And there was a park near the housing project at Lenox Avenue and West 114th Street that was often crowded, especially on warm days. So on May 18th, 1989, 26-year-old Allison Dansby took her 2-year-old son Christopher to the park with her sister, mother, and some nieces and nephews. So Christopher had a 3-year-old brother named Levon, and the family had nicknamed Levon Poncho and Christopher Choo Choo. Christopher was just beginning to say a few words. He really loved cuddling with his mom and spending time outside. And that day at the park, Christopher went down the slide several times with his mom, which was one of his favorite activities. And Allison's sister Carolyn was playing with her kids on the swings. And it was a hot day and the park was really crowded. And Allison decided to go to the store to get the kids some snacks. So she left Christopher with her sister and her mother. So Allison returned about 30 minutes later, and it was about 7 p.m. at this point. And she had trouble seeing Christopher because, again, it was really crowded. There's a lot of kids, a lot of families. So she's like, I couldn't really spot him when I first got there. So she asked her mom and her sister, and they're like, no, he's there. He's just around here playing somewhere. So the three women start looking for him, but they soon realized that Christopher was not in the park at all and was missing. So the police were called and everyone started searching the neighborhood. They canvassed all of the apartments in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, asking if anyone had seen anything out of the ordinary. They also offered reward money to anyone who had information about Christopher. And a 24-block search area was set up, including helicopters and scuba divers searching a lake in Central Park. Search dogs picked up Christopher's scent for a few blocks, but then it disappeared. So the park was on a very busy street. So police are assuming at this point that someone could have just easily picked him up in a car and driven away with him. You're in a super crowded area, very easy to just grab him back in the car. And his mother in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, she's also no one would look twice at someone taking a crying toddler out of a park. She's the kid's screaming and crying, no, I don't want to go. And it's that's what 2-year-olds do when you leave the park. So she's no one's going to bat an eye if they see that happening.
Yeah.
Christopher's family was interviewed and they took a polygraph test, but the results were inconclusive. But as we know, polygraphs are not reliable, especially for a distraught family member. It's your 2-year-old son is missing, a polygraph. While I get the intentions behind it, it's not surprising that it's inconclusive, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the family had anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But rumors did start that Allison was a drug addict and that she had sold Christopher to pay off a debt. And Allison did admit that she used to be addicted to crack cocaine, but that she was in recovery at the time of Christopher's disappearance. And she's I didn't owe anyone any money. They also tapped their phones, but they could never find any information that pointed towards Allison having anything to do with her son's disappearance. And Christopher's father lived in Florida, and he wasn't very involved in his son's life, but he did come to New York City to join the search for Christopher and to speak with police. But police never found any indication that he was involved with Christopher's disappearance either. So then 3 months later, on August 10th, 35-year-old Rosa Glover took her 19-month-old son, Shane Walker, to the same park to play. So it was around 5 p.m. on Thursday evening, and Rosa worked full-time and took her son to the park when she got off work, so it was often crowded at that time. She described Shane as the happy young boy, that he smiled all the time, but he would only laugh when he was being tickled. She said he loved teddy bears and monkeys, and he enjoyed feeding bananas to the family's pet chimpanzee, which is just adorable, picturing this little 1-year-old feeding his chimpanzee bananas.
I have a lot of questions about the pet chimpanzee.
Unfortunately, that's all the information that was out there.
I want to know how you get a pet chimpanzee. I want to know about that.
Courtney, do you want a pet chimpanzee?
I do not at all.
Oh, okay.
0%. But I'm just very intrigued.
I mean, I would like to, I don't think I could, I don't need another animal in this house. But if a friend had a chimpanzee, I would love that. I would love to get to visit with a chimpanzee often.
Yeah, so,
just putting that out there, Courtney.
Chimpanzees are not domestic animals and are very unreliable. So I would not, obviously, I'm sure this family's pet chimpanzee was fine. I'm just saying, I don't trust it. You
never really know how they're going to react. Yeah.
No. And, chimps are so much about facial features, the way you look at them and stuff. And so it's you might not even mean to, and they take it as something threatening, but
just accidentally offending the chimp over there.
Yeah. I've done a lot of primate studies with my major. And so just that scares me. That's all I'm going to say. It scares me.
Or just I'm never getting a chimpanzee. But I thought that was a fun little fact about this toddler, and just super cute.
Very cute.
Yes. So on this day, Rosa had bought Shane some chips on the way so he could like eat them before they started playing. And he was sitting on the bench with Rosa eating his chips when two older children asked if they could play with him. And Rosa's like, like he's just a baby, like because they were like 5 and 10 years old. So she's like, he's 19 months old, like he's not really going to be able to like play with you, like like you're wanting to. And they're like, no, like we really want to play with him. So he did end up going off to play with the older children. So then Rosa was sitting by herself on the bench, and a man sat down next to her and started talking to her. He actually mentioned the recent kidnapping from that park and how no one was safe anymore. And Rosa actually was not aware of Christopher's disappearance like just 3 months before from this exact same park. Like she would later say, I wouldn't have taken my son to this park if I knew that this had happened like right here. And she said the man also like showed her scars from like a previous fight that he had gotten into, just kind of like weird vibes from him.
Such a man thing to be like, look at this scar.
Yeah. Look at this cool scar I got because I beat someone up. Okay.
You should see the other guy. He said that. He said that.
100%. Yeah.
So Rosa suddenly realized she couldn't see Shane and started looking for him. She saw the two children he'd been playing with and asked where he was. They said he started playing in a different area of the park and didn't know where he was. So the police were called again and soon noticed the similarities between the two disappearances. So both were young Black boys around the age of 2 who disappeared from the same park between 5 and 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening while it was warm out and the park was crowded. So quite a few similarities.
Yeah, like same time, same day of the week, same kind of similar scenario.
So police began canvassing the apartments in the housing project again and also searched in dumpsters and garbage chutes looking for any sign of Shane. So police received an anonymous tip that Shane had been buried under an old building, and the police actually had the building knocked down, but they couldn't find any evidence of Shane. So they're obviously taking this disappearance very seriously, trying to follow any leads, but nothing's coming from it.
Yeah, and the Unsolved Mysteries episode like had several like clips of like news stories from that time and like showing like this building being knocked down and like showing some of the things that like you're about to talk about with what they were doing in the community trying to get information. It's like they really seemed like they were putting a lot of effort into it.
So Rosa believed that the two children who were playing with Shane were being used by the kidnapper to lure him away. And she also believed the man who sat next to her and distracted her was involved. So police were able to locate the two children who lived nearby and interview them. They found no evidence that the children were involved with Shane's disappearance. Some people would later say those two children were also seen playing with Christopher before he disappeared, but it seems like that came out after Shane's disappearance, so it's not very credible. It's just kind of like speculation.
Yeah, kind of. And they all live in the same community. So it's like, yeah, those kids could have very well have been there 3 months before on a warm evening after work. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they were there. But then it's like, oh, they specifically know they were playing with Shane. And now people are like, oh, I think I saw them playing with Christopher too. And it's like, maybe you did, but also maybe you just think you did now that you're like thinking back and you're like, oh yeah, maybe that did have something to do with it. We've talked many times about how memories can be not completely accurate. So
yeah. And the man who sat next to Rosa on the bench was interviewed as well, but police couldn't find any reason to suspect him. And police also interviewed Shane's family, but cleared everyone. So a $30,000 reward was offered to anyone who had information about Shane and Christopher's disappearances, which is quite a bit of money, like in the 1980s. Like
absolutely.
That's a pretty penny. So police drove through local neighborhoods with bullhorns sharing information about the two boys and asking anyone who knew anything to come forward. Investigators strongly believe that Christopher and Shane were kidnapped because they would have been found by now if they just wandered off from the park, gotten lost. Like if it was just like them walking away, like they would have found them. So their hunch is that both boys were stolen by someone who wanted to have children but was unable to. And the kidnapping of Carlina White led police to believe this could have happened to Christopher and Shane too. So 2 years earlier, on August 4th, 1987, Joy White and Carl Tyson rushed their newborn daughter, Carlina White, to Harlem Hospital Center because she had a fever. So Carlina was only 19 days old and had developed an infection during birth when she'd swallowed some fluid. So she was receiving fluids between 2:30 a.m. and 3:40 a.m. when a woman dressed as a nurse removed her IV line and abducted her. So the hospital had a surveillance system, but it wasn't working that night. So nurses were checking on her every 5 minutes and noticed she was missing at 3:40 a.m. So after Carlina's disappearance, other nurses and patients at the hospital remembered a woman hanging around the hospital in recent weeks.
I just want to insert something really quickly. So the sources that I found all said between 2:30 and 3:40, but then also said that they were checking on her every 5 minutes. So I just want to acknowledge
I was wondering that was weird. I was like,
So I just want to throw that out there that, like, yes, that's what the information we found says, but no, that does not make sense, because if you were checking on her every 5 minutes, you wouldn't have this like hour and 10-minute window of when this could have happened. Like, it would literally be a 5-minute window because, oh, at 3:35 she was fine. At 3:40 she was not there. So I just want to throw that in there that, like, don't come for us because we recognize that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I mean, I guess if a woman dressed as a nurse, like, I mean, you usually know your coworkers, but I'm like, because she'd been walking in every 5 minutes and they were like, yeah, someone was checking. But you would think it like a night shift, like, you know who your coworkers are and you would recognize her. So,
well, I was wondering too, I mean, you'll kind of get into her being like around, but you know, you have like hospital volunteers and stuff. So it's like, how common is it for like random people who are like volunteering that you're like, oh, like, I don't really know this person. They also say like she's been around some. So like, oh, maybe I just haven't met the new volunteer or, you know, but
still
I don't know. Yeah.
This makes me think a lot of the like multiple babies who went missing from Grady Memorial Hospital. Makes me think of that a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Which also, I mean, just to go on 500 side tracks here. So I don't know if things were like different in the 80s but like to leave your 3-week-old baby, not even 3-week-old baby, like alone in the hospital overnight is just, I can't wrap my brain around it. I really can't. Like, I don't know if that was like a norm then of like, yeah, like just your baby will stay here and get fluid and treatment and like we'll check on her every few minutes and she's literally alone in a hospital room at 3 weeks old. Like, I just cannot wrap my brain around this. Like,
well, I wonder too, because she's getting IV fluids and she's obviously very sick. Did they put her in a section where they're like, you cannot come in here because then you might contaminate the area? Kind of like like a NICU kind of thing, but like an 80s version where it's like the parents literally could not be with her.
Yeah,
because
of
like
that's true.
Health reasons, you know, like.
Yeah. And obviously, like, people who have babies in the NICU for like long periods of time, like, of course you can't stay there forever and you have to leave your baby. So I'm not like saying anything bad about people that, you know, have to leave their baby in that situation. But for like a one night, like you like got there that night and like a few hours later, like went back home just seems very strange to me. But
so she wore nurse's clothing and spoke to patients, but no one knew her. So a security guard saw the woman leaving at 3:30 a.m., but couldn't tell if she had a baby with her or not. And police investigated, but never found any leads, and Carlina's kidnapping case went cold. So the woman who had been dressed as a nurse at the hospital in Harlem was Anugita Petway. She was from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and she did have a history of larceny, theft, and forgery, like as a teenager. She did struggle with drug addiction as an adult. And in 1987, Petway told her friends she was pregnant and she left town for a while before returning with a baby. So Carlina White grew up with Petway in Connecticut and believed her name was Nezra Nance. So Carlina sometimes wondered if Petway was her real mother because her skin was much lighter and she didn't think they like resembled each other at all. She was like, we just don't look alike. Like, how does this adding up?
Yeah.
So in 2005, Carlina got pregnant during her senior year of high school and needed her original birth certificate to get state health insurance. So when she submitted the birth certificate Petway gave her, she was told the document had been forged. So when Petway was confronted, she admitted that Carlina wasn't her biological child and said her real mother didn't want her and abandoned her at birth. So Carlina was now 23 and spent the next year trying to get answers from her mother, but she could never like get her to give any more answers about like her biological family. So sometime after her daughter was born, Carlina moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where her aunt Cassandra had moved a few years earlier. So Carlina turned to the internet for answers and searched for information on kidnappings in Connecticut. So Carlina didn't access the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, site until 2010, when she expanded her search and found a photo of a missing baby in 1987 that strongly resembled Carlina's own daughter.
Like, she said it was just so eerie that she's like, because now she has like this weird suspicion that like something is not right. Because at first, you know, your mom's like, oh, like you were abandoned. Like, that's why I don't have an actual birth certificate for you. And it's like, it's hard to like not believe like your mother when she tells you that, this person who was like raised you your whole life and like taking care of you. And like, she's like, she wasn't abusive. Like, she wasn't like a bad parent. Like, she loved me. She cared for me. So it's like, why would you think? But then she's like, something's just not right here. So then she's like kind of digging into these kidnappings. And then she's on the NCMEC site. And then she's like, that's my baby. Like, this looks like my baby. And it was like her baby. Like, I can't imagine how weird that must have been to like, to be like looking through and you're like, this looks just like my child.
Yeah. So weird. So Petway's sister, Cassandra Johnson, helped Carlina reach out to NCMEC in December of that year, and they contacted Joy White and Carl Tyson to inform them their daughter had been found 23 years later. And DNA testing did confirm Carlina White's identity. So Anugeta, I think I pronounced her name like 3 different ways. I'm so sorry. And Ugetta Petway went on the run while Carlina flew to New York and was reunited with her birth family. On January 23rd, 2011, Petway did turn herself in to the FBI. She said she had a series of miscarriages that led her to kidnap Carlina and raise her as her own. So Carlina did legally change her name back to Carlina White from Nidra Nance. But today she still kind of goes by the nickname Nettie. I mean, 23 years as someone else, you probably, that's a hard change.
Yeah. And she said too that Nettie was like a nickname that she had kind of like given herself at some point. So she's like, that felt like the right name to like go by because it wasn't a name that anyone else had given me that now I have to kind of like pick a side of, you know, she's like, I gave myself this name, so I'm going to go by this name.
Yeah. And Carlina has tried to build a relationship with her biological parents, but she does still love the woman who raised her for 23 years. Again, like, she wasn't abusive. That was her mom that she thought for all intents and purposes. And we can't really find any information about Petway's sentencing. So many believe that Christopher and Shane could have also been kidnapped by someone trying to have a family. Specialists have created age progression photos of what Christopher and Shane would look like today, and both men would be in their 30s. Christopher does have a birthmark that resembles a figure 8 on his neck, and Shane has a birthmark on the back of his shoulder and a small scar on his chin. If you have any information about the disappearance or whereabouts of Christopher Dansby or Shane Walker, please contact hotline at ncmec.org or 1-800-THE-LOST.
Yeah, just such a sad case. Like, you're literally just playing at the park and then your baby disappears and there's literally never been any kind of information and like no closure. And of course they hope that their children are still alive and just like don't know that this is, you know, that this is their story. And who knows with like the age progression photos, how accurate those are, you know, because you could be like, oh, well, if this story's out there and like people see it and they're like, oh, that looks like me, but maybe it doesn't really look like you because, you know, they get things wrong. And you've been raised by this family your whole life and have no reason to doubt that, you know, they're not your biological family. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a tough one. And I'm sure for these women, it was just like another day at the park. Like every other day they would come, like just a completely normal day. And then it's just really tragic. And it's like, it's so hard to know what happens. And yeah, it's like weird too, like with Carlina, how like, you know, like she needed her birth certificate for something and then they could tell it was like forged. So it's like, how have like Christopher and Shane, if they're with new families, like, because they were even older, like Carlina was only 19 days old, like they were older. So it's like, how did they get like fake birth certificates or information? Like, I would hope that if they're still alive, they like went to school and had to get jobs at some point. So it's just like,
and it's like they're only, you know, a few years older than us. It's not like this is something that's like in the 40s. And so, you know, things were kind of iffy with like what you needed to start school and stuff like that. But it's like, you have to have a birth certificate to start school, like your social security card to get. So it's like, how, I don't know.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But hopefully
very sad.
There is some closure at some point. I mean, because that is just, it's so sad.
Yeah, it really is. And just like forever, like not knowing. And it was really sad. Rosa, Shane's mom in the Unsolved Mysteries, she's like, I just like imagine that like one day, like, you know, he's going to come back into my life and then we're going to be able to like go on like a family vacation to Florida together. It was just such like a specific thing like that she like imagines in her head. But I'm just like, God, for 20, how many years? It's been longer than that now. Over 30 years. Yeah, like 35 years. 30.
Yeah.
for like 30 something years that you just like don't know what happens. Like dealing with the loss of a child in general is horrific, but dealing with the loss of a child and having no idea if that child is still alive and still exists in this world and has no idea who you are. This one was tough. I just cannot imagine.
Yeah. Very sad.
So yeah, it's always an awkward transition. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that I got to see Lizzo in concert, and it was absolutely incredible. It was an amazing show, and she brought out like drag queens during some parts of the show to be like, hey, Tennessee, fuck you with your new drag law ban, like go fuck yourself. So it was an absolutely incredible show. The opening act was incredible. She was incredible. Like the vibes were incredible.
Yeah.
It was just such a good concert. Probably one of the best I've ever been to, honestly. It was just
That's awesome.
It was amazing. And it was so much fun. So that's my perk of the week because got to see the queen herself. So
that is a very good perk of the week.
Yeah, it was awesome. But yeah, so that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that yesterday, I got to hang out with one of my best friends of like 20 something years and her daughter. And so we got to have a little like girls' day with like me and my daughter. Cause she also has two sons, but they were hanging out with their dad yesterday. So like we got to just have like a, just the four of us little girls' day and like go shopping and like play outside and watch a movie and, all that fun stuff. And it's just really nice to get to have some time, like just us and like, I'm so used to when I see my friends after living out of state for so long, it's like, oh, you try to like see real quick and you cram everything into like one day and then everything is like rushed and you don't feel like you have time to like really get to like connect with each person individually, So it was nice to have a day, just the two of us, and also have a day that like our two girls could just get to play together and, not have the boys like overpowering and getting into, and like them just getting to like play with their dolls and like little princess stuff and like all the little like girly things that you get to do at this fun age of childhood. So yeah, that is my perk of the week.
Yeah, that's a good one. You're finally getting to get all the rewards of moving back home.
Yes, which is why I've also been just so busy the last forever because I'm playing like 6 days a week now. I'm not used to that.
Yeah, see, you'll soon get like me where you're just like, I ain't coming. I see ya sometime, but it ain't now.
Well, but see, I come like last night hanging out with Courtney and Tiffany, and then I try to leave at an acceptable time of 10:30, and then everyone makes fun of me, and then I have to stay longer, and I just want to go to bed.
Jacqueline showed up late. She was like the last one there, and then she tried to be the first one to leave.
Well, I wanted to wait and put Millie down. So like I put her down and then I had to stop and get some beer and a fruit tray. And then, so I finally got there. And then I'm like, it's 10:30. It's about bedtime. And, Tiffany's like, your baby's in bed. Why do you have to leave? And I was like, this baby wants to be in bed, but okay.
No, there's no sleeping. That's,
apparently not. That's over.
But if you want to tell us about your concerts, your plans, your thoughts on this case, do you have like any more information that like we haven't heard of, or do you have any like theories, anything like that? You know where to find us on all the social media platforms. It's in the show notes if you need that. Please do not forget we do have Patreon. That is where our bonus last week came out, and we have like 30 plus bonuses at this point. You can get a pin and a sticker. You can get like hangouts. You can get bonus episodes, Discord access, ad-free episodes. If you hate because we don't plan where the ads go. So if you hate that they're just like in the middle of us talking, don't have to have any ads at all. Patreon.com/caffeinated-crimes. And we're going to be at CrimeCon in September. Yes. Don't forget. I've said it like 3 weeks in a row now.
And we'll remind you again in, a few more months, and make sure that you guys get your tickets and are there. And or if you just live nearby and you want to come see us, even though,
if you have like a season pass to Disney World and you have a get a friend in free and you just want to take us to Disney World, because Jacqueline, did you look up where our hotel is in relation to Disney World? We're basically
Oh no.
in Disney World.
Well, Courtney, we might need to
we'll have to see what the vibe, but I mean, like, I looked it up and it was like our hotel, and it's like the outskirts Disney that like you can go to without going to Disney World.
Love it.
But also, if you wouldn't mind, give us 5 stars, Spotify, Apple, subscribe on YouTube, give us likes. I don't know, be nice to us.
Yes,
I don't really know what else to say, but in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee
and don't commit a crime.